up to and including the still concealed documents, the bona fides, the footprints, Punahou School, Occidental College, Columbia University, Columbia Thesis, and I'm just mentioning the ones that I can remember: Harvard Law Review, Passport, Medical, Baptism, Adoption. The list goes on. And that started this campaign a couple years ago with people putting up a billboard, so where's the birth certificate? We had one up, and people picketed it as a racist billboard. And the document which the Obama campaign released to satisfy critics is not an Hawaiian birth certificate, nor is it a certificate of live birth. It is simply this photo of a document entitled Certification of Live Birth. A birth certificate would have the name of the birth hospital, the birth doctor's name, the birth witnesses, the birth certificate number. None of this stuff is there. So people believe that the president has spent well over $2 million to prevent the disclosure of any public records, such as a health department copy. So stands in the door is Lieutenant Colonel Lakin, and he now presents himself to the mercy of a military court. Is that a pretty good overview, Dr. Lakin?
It is. It's a good summary. Thank you, Peter.
All right. Jerry, you agree with that?
Yes, I agree, Peter. That's a good summary.
All right. So what happens next? Dr. Lakin.
I don't know. I don't know. We just have to kind of hope that justice is going to finally maybe leak its way into our system. That if Obama is not going to come forward, that maybe somebody from his party, somebody of strength and character, may say, "Hey, this issue's tearing at the nation. What are you going to do about it?" Maybe with a change in the Congress, maybe people will now step forward and without worrying about being automatically labeled a racist or having some type of political agenda. Maybe even the Supreme Court at one time or another will act like the Supreme Court of old and not shy away from the issue. I can only hope, but right now Congress seems more focused on doing investigations into baseball players and things like that, so it's unfortunate.
Jerry, what do you think is going to happen?
Well, there's a couple of routes. One is if the court-martial goes forward and Lieutenant Colonel Lakin is found guilty, which is likely what's going to happen, pressing it on appeal has a lot of positives. It's going to have to take a court to get to hear it, but it should be an appealable matter. The key issue is, and also if Lieutenant Colonel Lakin is going to have to go to jail, military jail, over this, he becomes more of a cause celeb. It's going to get a lot more attention. The key strategy, there's two strategies. One is to press at some point or other for a court to issue discovery so that the documents of birth records of President Obama can be made public. That would be the first but less likely alternative in terms of an outcome. The second to be pressed for, there's a history here. There's at least one other case in which the Pentagon dropped it rather than be forced to release the birth records. Once the Pentagon was clear that the birth records were going to have to be produced, and simply rescind Lieutenant Colonel Lakin's orders to report to Afghanistan, and the case would become moot. So, the key issue here is now that Lieutenant Colonel Lakin has stepped out and taken this action, the court-martial's going forward, is to press it to one resolve or the other, but keep the pressure on and keep the public pressure on so that the White House knows at some point or other this case is going to be one demanding that birth records be produced.
What do you think the network news and the big national papers will do with this story? Dr. Lakin, what do you think they'll do? Because with the exception of the Denver Post, who gave it a little box one day simply because you guys are from Greeley, there hasn't been much other than, alternative talk radio, a couple of other places, but the so-called mainstream guys have stayed so far away from this, which is so telling anyhow. But what do you think they'll do with this story?
It's really hard for me to tell. I think that as more of us, let our voices be heard, and as people start to delve into the issues a little more, they realize there really is merit and there really are issues. So I can only hope that we'll start to hear more about this.
What do you think will happen, Jerry?
Well, the issue is only going to continue to build. I've got a book that's going to come out on this on April, on the whole issue, my books have tended to produce big reaction. The Democrats are not going to be able to ignore it. The issue is going to come forward for 2012. There's going to be new legislation introduced in Congress. I'll be in Washington this week talking to some of the congressmen in their offices who are going to introduce new legislation demanding that birth records be produced for any candidate or president, like Bill Posey's legislation from Florida, Congressman Posey. When a presidential campaign committee is formed, the FEC would have to see birth credentials. And there's going to be legislation at the state level. If one state demands that a Secretary of State look at birth credentials to put a person's name on the 2012 presidential ballot, that might be enough to get President Obama not even to run for re-election. This issue is not going away.
No, there's a theme out there that's, isn't interesting enough. Hillary Clinton stayed totally out of the country during the election. And is she waiting in the wings for all of this to blow up, and then she steps in?
Well, there's two things here, Peter. One is Hillary's playing it very carefully. Remember, the eligibility issue on Obama started with Hillary Clinton.
Absolutely.
And secondly, and she's going to wait in the wings to see how this all sorts out. But as Obama weakens in power, which he is dramatically weakening now after the midterm elections, the typical history is that these presidents get done from within. In other words, there's going to be elements within the Democratic Party that don't want Barack Obama releasing. I'm getting a lot more information today through sources than I've ever gotten on the eligibility question, and there's more coming loose right now, and my suspicion is it's coming loose from the inside.
To Dr. Lakin,
yes,
what is your brother saying, and where is he as we speak?
He's at his home, and he's kind of going to his clinic every day and seeing patients every day. He's no longer allowed in the Pentagon. That would be, although when you do get privileges to go in the Pentagon, of course, you have to provide your birth certificate.
Sure. It's amazing.
And so he's waiting for this all to shake out, and is hopeful, always hopeful. He's very idealistic that the truth will eventually surface, and that he'll be vindicated. So,
can I keep you through one more break?
Sure.
All right, everyone, hang on. 630 KHOW, Denver's talk station, 27 after the R6. Traffic time, here's Susan. Thank you, Mike. 6:32, 28 before the hour. The sister of one of the men attacked in this ongoing series of attacks in Denver will join us. Julie Hayden will join us. Rich Wyatt will be on the show. We are talking about, I think, a very brave man, decorated flight surgeon after 18 years of service, including year-long tours in Honduras and Bosnia and Afghanistan, now risks his career and faces almost certain court-martial and imprisonment. His brother's on the line with us, as well as Dr. Jerry Corsi. And it is a story that I think, it has not been not given the attention. And there are reasons, once again, I think we watch the press in action. Interestingly enough, this morning it's been announced that one of the transition team members for John Hickenlooper into the governor's office will be none other than Bill Owens. That just explains so much of what we have watched in this state in these last few months. All right, let's